Now within this, we're going to look at the flow again, and then I want us to actually start from the flow. So let me just share my screen. That is the diagram that I showed you in the previous video. So we can have a look at how things are going to be done and what is the first thing that we need to do. So I believe you can see my screen, and in here you can see from the basic flow, we want to have the admin session first. Now from the admin, the first thing that the admin needs to do is to log in, meaning we need to work on authentication first. Okay, so let's go and create our project, and then we're going to start with authentication by logging in and creating an account. And aside from that, we move on to the dashboard. So with this, we're going to first build the UI. Normally, I do build the backend first, but for now, I want to change a little bit. So we want to first have a simple UI, and then we move on with that. So here, I'm going to minimize this, and I have my Visual Studio 2022 open. But before we create our solution with the various projects, what we're going to be doing here, we're going to be using vertical slice layer architecture, which organizes your project in layers. It's not layers, rather features. I was talking about clean architecture. Okay, so with the vertical slice layer, it organizes your project with features. So let's say we're going to have a create account. It's a feature. We're going to have login account. It's a feature. We're going to have create meeting. It's a feature. So everything that this feature needs in order to work is going to make it possible and available in that feature. And also we're going to be using the CQRS design pattern. So I've made a video already on CQRS, and we're going to also look at how we can integrate that in this. So well, let's stick to this and let's move on. Now Visual Studio is open. I'm going to create a solution first and then add 3 projects. I'm going to be adding Web API as a back end. I'm going to be adding WebAssembly as a front end. And then, since we are having a front end to drive the back end, we're going to be using some models in here. Now, these models, definitely they're going to be shared because client needs it as well as the back end. So to skip duplication, I'm going to add another library, which is a C# class library. And I'm going to put all these classes, which will be shared by the API and now the client together, and dump it in that library. So anytime that I need it, I can just add a reference to this project and also add it to the other project, and then I can use the same library in both projects. So let's do that. So you can see from here that we having a project created. I have the server. You can change it to a back end, and now the client could be front end, or you can say API and also Blazor WebAssembly. But well, since we're going to be having a client and server, I decided to chip those names here. So I have my API and I have my Blazor WebAssembly as well as our shared library. All that I'm going to be doing is to add this shared library to both projects. Okay, so that is done now. Now again, we're going to look at this for authentication. We're going to have a login. Now this login, we're having only two properties that we need to create in a class, which is email and password for our login. And then for the create account, that is name, email, and password. So if you want to add more, you can go ahead and now add more. But since you're going to be using secure RS, we're going to be having our request and our response classes. So within that, I want to maintain the same thing here. For organization purpose, I want to create a folder for authentication, and then we also have another folder for meeting when we get there. So you can see from our project that we created currently with the shell library, we created a new folder in authentication, which are the requests and the responses folder. Now, why did I create that? First of all, when we talk about requests, is any command that is coming out from the user to our API or to our server. That's a request. Let's say you want to create, so you want to update, you want to delete. All these are requests. Now, any response that is coming out from my API to the user, that is response. So in this, we're going to group our request and our response in this folder. So if you open request folder, you know that, hey, these are the commands that I'm sending from the user to the machine or to the server. And now the response is going to be from the responses that the server is going to generate, and I return it to the user. So now that you are good with this, let's go and create our models in each of the folder that we have created. So before we create this request, I want us to create our custom response. It is good that in your whole application, you have a preferred way of returning response to a user, because we are going to consume this in client, and we want to make sure that we do not have any error in the client, or in case there's any error that generates from our server, we want to handle that so that the client can also consume it and display to the user. Because when you have an error in that, or let's say validation rule, etc., the client might also see the same. So within that, it is good that you go out with your custom response type. So in that, I created a simple one, very simple one. And let's see how we can create that. So we're going to put that in the shared library. It's going to be used by the authentication, also the meeting. So I decided to put it outside, so this can be shared by all the models that we're going to create. So when you look at our service response that we have created, we have an access. We want to have a default value to it. Message, in case you have any message you can pass on. And with our service response, this we can also return a model. Let's say I want to get a list of meeting, only meeting, etc. So all these we can pass on to this value here. So that is the reason why we are creating this as generic, so we can specify the model type anytime that we want to return a list or an object. So now that we are done here, we go to our request. And then with our request, we're going to create user request, login user request. We're going to create all these in the request. Within that, these are what I need. As this should be a public and a class. And then I need these properties, the same as what we saw in the diagram, just that here we are adding password confirmation, so you can confirm the password. And then we're going to also create a login response, not the response, login request. This also takes in only 3 properties. That is an email and password. Okay, so we also going to handle the response. Now that we have our request created, let's see our create user response and then our login user response. So with this, we are having our t type as string, because here we are not going to provide any a model of t, or let's say a model with this. We need to use this one. Let me show you. From our service response, we're going to be using this, its access, and also the message. As for this, we're not going to use that, because when you're going to return a create response, we're going to return any t model here. We need only the message and not the success. So we can decide to pass in string here as the type. And that is what we are doing here. Now let's go and also create a login response. Now, aside from the basic one that we have in the default ones that we have in the service response, which comprise of the its access and now the message, we want to add an extra property in here, because we're going to provide, as soon as user logs in, we want to provide JWT token. So we can pass it on here. So in order for us to create our UI, we need some third libraries. And here I'm going to be using the free one, Fluent API. This is a Fluent API. It's a Fluent UI. So Fluent UI, I think it's part of Microsoft. They do provide free component that we can use. And also I have 1 or 2 components that I have created myself. So we're going to also be using this, but you are free. You can switch to any component at all and integrate it in this. Okay, so let's get these packages installed first. All right, so these are the packages that we will need in the client for now. We need a component.authorization to authorize our component. If you install this package, you can have access to authorize, view a component, and also you can also use I think authorize attribute. Yes, and also we're going to be using the Fluent UI. We need this extension so we can create our own HTTP client factory. We need this Fluent UI from this component to emoji and icons. These are all the components that we need from this Microsoft. And also I have a model that I've created, very friendly, useful, and we're also going to be using that. I have also created a simple screen loader, and we also going to use this. Actually, this is the first time that I'm going to use this package in a demo project like this. So later on, we can improve this much. Then we're going to be using this local storage, which gives us access to the browser local storage. If you want to use cookie, I think I have cookie over there. So you can go out there and get that. I think from the NuGet packages, you type in Netcode. I think I have the cookie here. So if you want to use that, yes, you can also install this and use the cookie. But for now, we're going to be using the local storage here. That is what we need. Okay. Now what again, we're going to be using system.identitymodel.tokens.jwt so we can read the claims from the token, which is going to be brought back from the server, okay, and authenticate the user. And then we're going to have our Twilio. This Twilio here is a library that we're going to give us access to our video. So we can have access to the video. We can create meetings and stuff. So with this, we see how to work with it. So once you have all these packages installed, we can go ahead and create a login component. Our login component is going to use some specific layout. Since you're going to have a client, host, the client could be an attendee, the host, we must have separate layout for each. So with that, I think we're going to include this layout in the component that we're going to create, which is the login and then the register. So it's better that we finish the layout creation before we hop into the component, that is the login and then the register. So in here, from this layout that we have the default layout over here, menu and main layout, and then we having our nav menu. We're going to create our admin, maybe landing layout. We're going to have our attendee layout, and then we're going to have our dashboard layout. So we're going to have 3 layouts. I want to leave the default one here. I'm not going to touch that. So maybe later on, if you want to make reference to it, you can go ahead and do that. So let's create a new component from this, and I'm going to call this as admin landing layout. Now this is going to be used by admin, as the name implies. So in here, we're going to be creating our header component. We are here to create that. Now this is going to be for our header. Then let's have our div class, where it's going to center this, and what we're going to be using, you're going to center that. So once we have specified or used header component and our footer component, I think in order for us not to forget it, let's go and create that first. So within the pages here, we have in this default ones, never mind them. Let's move on. We're going to create a folder here, and this is going to be an admin. Now with this admin, we're going to also create another folder, and let's say this is authentication. Now within this authentication, let's have our footer in here. Well, with the footer and a header component, you can put them anywhere. It could be even in the pages, because actually they are not much related to authentication. Okay, whether you're authenticated or not, as soon as they log in, they can be able to see that. So maybe it's better that we move that from this. And we know with the client and admin, they're also going to use the same, let's say the same footer. So I believe putting that in the admin or the authentication folder is going to limit its ability, right? So it's better that in the pages, let's have our footer component there. So within the footer component, we can have a simple Fluent footer. Now there's a Fluent package, and then we can apply a simple CSS to it. And this is what I'm having it right there. You can you can update these and do a lot of stuff with it. Okay. So now that we have this, we have a footer in the pages. It means that even if you're admin or client, you can still use this. Now we go back to the admin layout, and then we can make reference to this. Okay, and I'll use that here. Let's see how to work with the header component too. Now the header component, I think this is going to be for the admin. If admin logs in, he's going to see this. So you can put that in the admin, rather not in the authentication. Okay, so let's see in the admin over here, let's add another component, and that's going to be header component. And now within this header component, we're going to be first creating a static class of this Fluent icon, so we can use this all the time. Now that we have this, we're going to create a Fluent app bar. I think Fluent also have this app bar that we can use. And from this, we can include the namespace or the using statement. We want to set the height and now the orientation to horizontal. Then we want to have the Fluent label. This label here, we want to set a type as header. And this is just a bootstrap classes that I'm adding. And here it is a name that I'm adding with some styles here with the VCF, video conference. Okay, it's a video conference, and I'm going to have a Fluent space bar. So you can see all these are Fluent components that we're using. And then we want to have this icon. And we want to have, if it is active, this is what you want to show. In case it is clicked, this is what you want to do. The same thing applies to this. It has icon reset, active, and now on click. All these are events. So here, when it is reset, this is going to get called. When it is on click, it's going to get called. And if it is active, it's also going to get called. So it means all these are methods that we're going to create so we can reference them here. Okay, so once we have this, we go in there to add our method. And now these are the methods that we need to work on. Now here is going to just return an icon. So if I click on icon here, let's say the login icon, I want to make sure it is filled. So see, we are using the field and our regular, the same size of it and the same icon type, person account. But just going to be a field. Like if I click on it, it should be filled. If I click on something somewhere, let's on the register, there should be regular. okay, so that we can have an active tab all the time. And in that, we're going to be using this nav manager. So we can inject a nav manager down here, no, top here. But you know, the best place to do this is to put that in the import.razor, so we can set this global use. So here we're going to say that inject navigation manager. Then let's say this is nav manager. So once you have this, when you go back to the header, we're going to have access to this nav manager, and we can navigate to login and register. That means when we create a component for login and register, this should be the name. Take note. Okay, so now that we have this our header component set, we are now going to let's go and make reference to it in the admin layout. So let's use the reference here. Okay, so we are good. We have no issue with it. Let's go and have our landing page, which is going to be a login, because you know, with an admin, with an app that we're going to create, before user get access to the dashboard, the user must log in. So that's going to be the primary page that the user needs to land on. So that's the reason why I am saying this is landing page. User needs to land on that as soon as he visits our site to create or to manage a meeting. So in that, this is going to come from the authentication, and I'm going to create a new component. But this is not a component. This is also although a component, but I'm going to say it's a page. Why am I saying that? The difference between this component here means it's a chart component, header component, footer component. They are all children component. Why? Because we are using this component here. But there's going to be a page that user going to land on. It's going to have a page route. So I'm going to say it's a landing page. So look at the differences between this is landing page. Now this landing page, I'm going to be using an edit form. Now this edit form, first of all, let's set up a page. Now this should be the default, or that's the home page. But you know, when you check our home component, it has one already. So I'm going to override that, so we can have only one page like this. Now within this, we're going to have a simple edit form to handle this. But before we do that, we need to create our model. So let's work on the code first. Now within that, we're going to be checking if this current user is authenticated, because if authenticated, we will not allow you to log in again. And in that, I have some properties I'm going to set, like show message and stuff. That is by using the model and then the loader. So you know, we installed I think 2 packages of Netcode-Hub, which is the modal and also the loader, right? So we're going to be using that here to show and to load the page when the user clicks, to control the interactivity of the page. And also we are going to create a login request instance, which we're going to be using for our edit form. So there is a request that we created coming from the shell library. And in here, we're going to handle that. So I have this simple code to work with that. When the user clicks on handle login, let's say when I'm done providing everything and I click on login, what do I need to do? We need to go in for our login response first. Then we're going to have this authentication service. But let's first go through and see. As soon as the button is clicked, hey, I'm done. You provide your username and password, click on login. We want to show loader. So this show loader here is going to blur the screen. Then we're going to have this loader running. Okay, so it prevents user from double clicking on the button. Okay, so that one function can perform at a time. And then we want to at least delay for 500,000 is much, 500 milliseconds. And then we want to call a response from this service. This is going to connect with our API and then return a response to us. Now, when I return this response, since we are not going to, we will handle a refresh token in an advanced one. So for now, we're going to say that there is a token. Now, this token is only going to be this response token, because you're going to have only token from the response. So we need not to append this token to it. So we have only this. Now this is our response token. Now with this response token, we can go ahead and now pass in this token here. We're going to create this authentication state provider, and then we're going to have a method in it which is going to set this token to local storage. So we're going to call that method and now pass on this token in there. Okay. Once you're done, we're going to navigate to the dashboard. And after we are done with that, we can return, or even we can decide to take this off because this is going to navigate, so it will not stay on the same page. So we need not to return. But well, for normally, I want to make sure if something happens here, I do not trespass. I need to return. And then when that happens, but in case the response here it is not true, meaning it's not passed, you want to show off the loader. And then the message that's going to come from the service, you want to put it up here as a message. And now this message, we want to show this modal message response. Now with this, I'm going to create a two instance of the modal. One's going to be for message response and one's going to be for our edit form. Okay. Now with this, we're going to use this modal as a response, which is going to show the message to the user. It's going to pop up and now pass on the message. And since we are changing the state of all this, in order to make it as active, we can use state has changed. At times, if you even decide not to use this, it works. But well, I want to make sure it works no matter what. So I want to have this state has changed, which will force the page to re-render since some of the states have changed. And then we're going to have what we're supposed to see. So that is our login. Now within that, we're going to also have another button, which is going to be an OK button. Now if I click on OK button, what am I going to do? I'm going to just show or close the message, because you know that this message is going to pop up. When it popped up and user clicks on OK, I'm going to change the state of this, and now state has changed to just get this modal hidden. That is all this method is going to do. At times, you can also comment this to make sure it works. By one, bringing this over here, actually, it will enforce it. And then when the page initializes, that is where we're going to check, because before user logs in, that means user is not authenticated. So there's no way that user is already authenticated and still can have access to a login page. That should not be happening. So in that, on the first method I need to create, we're going to use this initialize method. Now with this initialize method, we want to try this because the user tries to come in here while not authenticated. Getting this can throw an exception. So we try this so we can catch it. Now with this exception, we are swallowing it because we know that, hey, we don't need this exception for anything. We want to make sure we maintain the page. So we try to swallow this exception. But in case the user is not authenticated and at least this works, then we want to navigate to the dashboard. That is when user is authenticated, okay? Because here we are using this is authenticated, which is going to return a boolean which is true or false, as you can see from here. And in case it is true, then hey, navigate to the dashboard. So that's what we're going to have for our code base with our landing page, which is definitely our login. Now within that, let's go and create a simple edit form for this. But before that, we're going to create an instance of my screen loader, which is Netcode-Hub screen loader. It is coming from this namespace. So, and here we're going to set this. It takes in a parameter of which is Boolean expression, which is true or false. So we set this. So default, as soon as this page loads, it is set to false, meaning it's not going to load. But as soon as the button is clicked, show, it's going to show it. And at the end, close it. You see that? Amazing. And then the next thing that we're going to be doing here is to handle the message. So we're just going to create a modal, which is going to handle the message over here. So down there, you can put it either on top or beneath. It's still going to work. Wherever they're going to put this, it's going to work. And we're also using this namespace of component.screenLoader. No, that's .modal. Now with this, we having this bind open that we need to provide it. You need a boolean, which is modal message open. So we have it over here. So default is set to false. When the page loads, this is going to be hidden. As soon as you set this to true, that is where it's going to be shown. So check this, then enforce the state, and this is going to work. Okay. So we have a border class that you can specify it on. We have a custom style that you can specify it in here. That is our content template. So you can specify all your content that you need in here. And you can see I'm using this div alert type of bootstrap, and I'm passing on the message, and I'm having a button as OK. If I click on this, I want this to be hidden, and I'm doing that here. Fantastic. Okay, so that is all that we need for this login. Now let's see from the edit form. Now with this edit form, I have it set nicely on top. And now with the edit form that we have, when you have a look with this, it is just lying in the div class of margin top of 5 of bootstrap, which is going to give at least space on top. And now set this, actually give some space on top, and then display this edit form. Now within that, we are having a model as login. And now when this button is clicked, if it is valid, you want to call this. We have already specified that in here. Now this is going to be our login. This is the instance of our model that we have created. Now with this, we're using that over here. And now we're going to be using this Fluent card. So this Fluent card, we need to also include the namespace nicely, and which is coming from the component Fluent UI.as Netcode component. And then we are using this label, kindly login. We have our input text, which is a Fluent text field. You can specify the weight of it, and then the type over here as email, the maximum length you can specify it, and on the label. So only one component, you can specify all that you need here. That's amazing. We're doing same for the text field, and this time around we're going for password. So we need email and password. When you check our UI, email and password from our diagram, right? So we're doing same over here. And then we're going to have our Fluent button to log in. And it's a type here, it's a submit type, which is going to get this method called when this button is clicked. And we are handling that here. Good, we're done with that. Okay, so that is for our login component now. Now let's go on to our register component. And let's take a break. And when we come, we're going to move on to our login or register component.